I did a business studies degree at Sheffield, and I had a third year placement year as part of my degree. And at the time, my housemate was doing the commercial property, and I thought, wow, that sounds pretty cool. I wouldn't mind getting into property. I managed to get a job at a company called Sanderson's, and I turned up at the age of 19, my year's placement. I finished university, and then he offered me a job in 2006. Came back, and then I worked there right till 2012. And then 2012 is when I set up my property plots and went full-time, self-employed, full-time business owner. So in the UK, you have all these different property strategies, which I'll talk through. So you get your long-term buy-to-let, which is long-term property management, which we do. You get short-term Airbnb management. You get land development, you get commercial-ready conversions, you get rent-to-rent strategies. I'll always see the positive in everything. That's just how my brain works. I'll always see the positives in everything. So yes, there's a lot of compliance, a lot of legality changes, but we welcome them like good agents, good landlords, good investors. Welcome compliance because it makes the industry better. In my property blocks, buy and build model, a lot of my time is on M&A, mergers and acquisitions. So I spend with my CFO and my senior team looking for opportunities to buy property management businesses. So it's all about EBITDA multipliers based on a valuation of how we buy these businesses.
One of the things I found so impressive is obviously you manage 2,500 properties and over 500 million pounds as well in assets, which I found extremely impressive, by the way. What systems do you rely on in order to try and like scale that massive amount effectively as well?
So yeah, it's a real good question.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Code to Winning. Insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow. Today we have a very unique and special guest coming all the way from the United Kingdom. God save the King. All right, special guest today. Just a brief introduction of our guest. Today's name goes by Benjamin Quaintrell. All right. Now we came and we met him at a real estate summit. We're going to talk a lot about real estate. We're going to talk a lot about like short-term, long-term rental to let and so forth as well. A brief introduction of who he is. He is the founder and a CEO of My Property Box. Also buy and build business acquisition. He manages over 2,500 properties and also 500 million pounds in assets as well. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, our special guest today, Ben Quaintrell. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Awesome. Excited to be on.
I was excited until you told me the bad news. So I'm about to expose him right now. So I met him yesterday. We had a luncheon. We were in a certain section at the Grant Cardone Las Vegas 10X tour. And he told me he was from Newcastle. I was so excited because Newcastle, just a brief background of Newcastle, they're a football team that recently won their first trophy in 70 years. So my excitement, my enthusiasm was over the moon, only to find out today he's a fake Newcastle fan. So before you give introduction yourself, can you please just give, apologize for lying to me?
I am apologise for saying I'm a Geordie. Anyone from the UK who's watching this knows that if you speak to someone international, especially from the US, and you say you're from Darlington, nobody's ever heard of Darlington. But I'll tell you what we're famous for. Darlington is famous for trains. The first rocket locomotive, the first world train was actually developed and made in Darlington. So it used to be on the back of a £5 note on an English sterling note. So Darlington is famous for trains.
Okay. And how far is Darlington from Newcastle?
About 30 minutes drive. So we're 30 minutes south of Newcastle, and about 45 minutes north of Leeds. And you'll know Leeds.
I know
FC,
Leeds.
Football.
Oh, I hate Leeds. They're our big rivals as well. So I never, I like them in the Premier League, but when I see the local fans talk about it, it's like they're dirty kind of they're very obnoxious fan base, so better than the Scousers though.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But the rivalry for Northern football is there, and you're a Man United fan.
Yes.
That's right, isn't it? So, you've got Man City on your doorstep, Liverpool, local rivals just around the corner.
Interesting though, northeast of the UK has got more Champions Leagues than the two London has. London only has 2 Champions Leagues collectively, and they're both from Chelsea.
Wow.
2012 and 2020, the COVID one. So Arsenal nothing, Fulham nothing, Brentford, Tottenham yeah, Tottenham's awful, but yeah.
Wow.
Enough about football. Can you give us a brief introduction just about who you are and how you started in the real estate space?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I'm 41 years old. You can't tell, of course. It's a good moisturiser that I use. But I've done real estate, or we call it in the UK, property estate agency. And I've done it since I left university. So I did a business studies degree and at Sheffield, we know Sheffield United, and at Sheffield Wednesdays, the other football team. And I did a general business studies degree, and I had a third year placement year as part of my degree. And at the time, my housemate was doing a commercial property, and I thought, wow, that sounds pretty cool. I wouldn't mind getting into property. So I decided to apply for all the year's work experience job at the local estate agencies in Darlington, or as you guys would say, the real estate agents. And I managed to get a job at a company called Sanderson's, and I turned up at the age of 19, my year's placement. I turned up. They could have put me in sales, or they could have put me in lettings, property management, and they just put me into property management that day. I did a year there, finished university, and then he offered me a job in 2006. Came back, and then I worked there right till 2012, and then 2012 is when I set up my property box and went full-time, self-employed, full-time business owner, and full-time running your own property company.
Oh, what inspired the name Our Property Box?
At the time, it was a bit of a brainstorm. So in 2012, there wasn't loads of businesses. Really, Facebook was out, of course, but there wasn't really many people with business Facebook pages. I remember sliders, sliders on websites, they literally just come out. And I remember being the first business in the area that had a slider on the website. And I was one of the first ones to have a business page. I called myself the digital agency. And it was going to be called iLet and iBox and iProperty. And then, it was going to be Property Box and the Property Box. And then I think after a bit of brainstorm with family and friends, it ended up being My Property Box, or MPB we call it for short.
And so obviously you started in 2012. How many different branches do you have?
So we've got 5 offices at the moment, but we have a model, and I'll talk about it later. So we got private equity backing last year, and the private equity, the VC funds have invested in us in M&A. So we buy property management companies, and one of our strategies is basically to consolidate the businesses. So what we do is we bought 14 businesses. So we'll buy a lettings or property management business. Not every time, but some of the time we'll then close that office, consolidate their team into our main office. We then cost sage on all the synergies for the administration, the accounts. It's called hub and spoke is the model, so centralised property management accounts. And then the spoke is the front end offices, so Newcastle, Northallerton, Darlington, Middlesbrough, Sunderland. And they're the front end offices look after front end letting properties, leasing properties, and front end sales. But the centralised property management is all run from the centralised headquarters office.
And I know you and I also spoke about it yesterday when I told you that I recently started in the market of short-term rentals in terms of Airbnb arbitrage, where it's almost like a form of like subleasing. So I don't own any of the property, but what happens is that I'll end up getting some properties, whether it be like apartments or actually homes, and end up like getting a lease there, but then you end up like subleasing as well. And I think are you in that field as well in terms of Airbnb?
So Airbnb's taken off globally over the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years. But really in the UK over these last 4 or 5 years. So what happened was, in about 2020, in and out of COVID, we kept getting asked if we managed Airbnbs, and it's a slightly different strategy. So in the UK, you have all these different property strategies, which I'll talk through. So you get your long-term buy-to-let, which is long-term property management, which we do. You get short-term Airbnb management. You get land development, you get commercial resi conversions, you get rent-to-rent strategies, loads of different strategies. But we kept getting asked if we managed Airbnbs, and it's slightly different. It's like having an Italian and someone saying you should start, doing steaks or a different type of, it's a different model. At the time, my wife Jane was like, "You need to do this." We're getting asked all the time, "Do we manage Airbnb?" But it's a completely different model. So we ended up launching a business in 2021 called Stay With Us, with a young entrepreneur I'm friends with.
Is it part of my
No, it's separate. It's completely separate. So it was born out of accident. So now we manage completely separate to My Property Box, called Stay With Us. and we have got about 130, 140 units in that now. So as a property investor in the UK, you might say, right, I've got some money I want to invest. I want to buy long-term, buy-to-let, long-term, or you might want to go Airbnb. Now Airbnb, the revenue difference, obviously it's each areas, and we can do on Airbnb, you can strategize on which is going to make you the most money based on room occupancy and obviously level of rents. But generally on Airbnb you'll make 20% more revenue, but it's more hassle, it's more reactive. You know, you have 20 people moving into an Airbnb unit on a Friday night. That comes with, you know, boiler's not working, the swimming pool hasn't been cleaned. It's more reactive. Where long-term property management is just slightly slower, and it's more like, you know, slow and steady. So there's no right and wrong answer. It's just different investors, horses for courses. That's a UK saying, horses for courses, right? So some invest in land, some invest in long-term property management, condos, apartment blocks. Some invest in Airbnb short-term. Some of them will do a rent-to-rent, so they might rent a whole apartment block and then will Airbnb each apartment room. There's so many different strategies, and I'm sure it's similar in the US.
Is that part of my property box?
No, I would say the long term is more consistent. Okay. The short term is more volatile, and it's subject to the market. So probably similar to here, you know, November, December, January tends to be the more quieter time for Airbnb in the UK. Subject to each area, so I'm just generalising. Exactly. But then obviously busy times, summertime holidays, families booking weekends away. You know, it depends, but yeah, it's seasonal. So it's difficult to predict. If you're forecasting your Airbnb strategy, you know, you'll often use AirDNA. Do you know AirDNA in the US? So AirDNA scrapes all the data off Airbnb. Okay. So if you were like, Ben, I want to know exactly what an apartment's going to do in Darlington, we can pull off a report that will tell you, you know, this is on an average room rent of £100 a night, is 65% occupancy from March to September, and then during the quiet time it's 50%. You can then data analyse exactly, I mean it's never exact, but it gives you a good idea of what it's going to cost. And then obviously if you're investing in this property, your initial outlay is like furniture packs, decorating, staging, so you can analyse exactly how much money do I need to put out, what is my return on investment after 12 months, and then you can forecast it out. And as a real estate property investor, you know, it is a numbers game. You know, a mistake people make often in the UK is they buy things with the heart. They might buy it probably because they like the way it looks or where it is, but they haven't nailed down the data, they haven't done the due diligence. It's all on the numbers, it's all on what you return, you know, what you know, how well are you going to let it out. It's all on the data, and that is it. You know,
and so I've always been very curious, the different markets between the United States and the United Kingdom. But the first thing I want to touch on is when you started your business, how easy was it to try and get investments, or did you already save up to your own form of money, or did you get like investors to try and invest in your company as well before you started off?
Yeah, a couple of different points there. So as property investors, so obviously I've got a few different hats on. So obviously I've got my agency hat on, and then I've got my property investment hat on. And that's kind of two different things. So as agents that manage properties, and then separately to that, landlords who are property investors. So as a property investor in the UK, obviously like any business, the one thing is, you know, you need money to invest. And it's a lot of the training courses in the UK, they teach you how to use other people's money. And it's about, as you guys know, building profile, credibility on your social media, and getting yourself into networking and getting yourself out there to show credibility to use other people's money. Now it's not that easy, but generally, you know, you can network with other property investors. You can often network with people that have money that don't know anything about property, and they will be looking to invest in an individual. Now, it'll be similar to the US. What you can offer people, investors, if you want to invest in properties, if they want to invest in you, is security. Because an investor cares about what money am I going to get on my investment, is my money safe, and when am I going to get it back. Now the safety one, so what you can generally, there's so many different strategies, but you know, you can offer charges. We call it first charge in the UK. So first charge is what a mortgage or a finance company might have. So if you're an investor that's going to chuck you 100 grand, 200 grand, you could say, I'll give you first charge on the property if there's no debt on the property already. Another option is you could give them a personal guarantee, PG, personal guarantee, and then if you don't pay them, they can technically file for bankruptcy against you. Or you can give them shares in a limited company, the asset, the vehicle that owns the property. So as you go through the process from the start, it's about building credibility, making the right contacts, building up your profile, and if you like anything in business, like we've experienced these last few days at the conference, if you get yourself out there and you grind, you'll find somebody. You have to get 100 no's to get one yes off. So, and that's what it's about. And a lot of people give up. So can you be a property investor in the UK with little money? Yes, you can. But there's a lot of work to do and a lot of education, a lot of learning, and all that sort of
I love that you mentioned that.
When I first came to America, one of the things I got to understand when you speak about the connections and building your profile, building your brand and so forth, in America, it's not what you know, but it's more like who you know as well. I realized that like networking relentlessly, getting the right investors, getting the right connections, getting the right people plays a big role in the long run as well, because you're one handshake away from obviously a completely different lifestyle. And so like, yes, in South Africa, and I think most parts of the world, connections are important, but I realized that it's almost like it's of utmost importance, especially in this country more than anything as well. Would you say networking is the same in like the UK a bit?
Yeah, so you might say this here, we say your network is your net worth. Is that saying here as well? Yeah. So the 5 people you spend the most time with, that's what's going to be in your
run.
Absolutely. So just getting around the people, even now, like Grant mentioned it last few days, it's just getting around them people that are doing more than you. Like, if you're the cleverest and wealthiest in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need to keep learning, keep educating yourself, going to the networking meetings, meeting people, asking questions, making mistakes, failing your way to success, all that sort of stuff.
I love that so much. My next question, so when I was like reading about you, studying about you, one of the things I found so impressive is obviously you manage 2,500 properties and over 500 million pounds as well in assets. The question I have for you regarding this, which I found extremely impressive by the way, what systems do you rely on in order to try and like scale that massive amount effectively as well?
So it's a real good question. It's not easy. That's why it's not an easy thing to scale a business successfully and at speed. And we use like CRM. We use a few systems. The main system we use is a CRM system, but it's actually when you're buying these property management businesses, every single one is generally on a different system. So we bought a business. We completed on a business 2 weeks ago called Ready to Rent. They have 309 properties, and they'll use a different CRM system. So we've got to data transfer 309 properties onto our CRM system, and then successfully transfer the data and build that into our process of looking after the client, the team. And the answer is it's really hard. And then the biggest difficulty about growing a business is people and data transfer, CRM systems. So yeah, we have a good system, but it's very it's very systemized, and it's all about systemizing. But yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, it's not easy. But our system, what it allows our clients to do is it allows them to be completely hands off. So a lot of our clients, our perfect avatar client, if you like, is a busy business owner that has a property portfolio, and that lady or gentleman hasn't got time to manage the property portfolio, manage contractors, so we take that off them. So they're doing their own business, they're busy, but we make it so easy for them so they can actually, log in on the app, log in on the system, they can download property reports, income reports, revenue reports, which tends to be rent arrears if there is any, see that all live. So the idea is making the process as slick as possible for the end user. So that is the CRM, that is the system. And every time we brought a new business on, it brings new challenges, of course, and that's how we do it.
I love this.
And I'm glad you mentioned the CRM. And obviously we've seen a drastic change in terms of technology and AI and stuff like that. Yeah. And is like your company as well implementing those tools? And are there any challenges regarding technology just improving each time?
Yeah, so there's always challenges, and we've always been one of these companies who wants to embrace the latest technology and be the market leader and be the ones that are the first to do it. And obviously AI is upon us now. We haven't implemented it yet. We're looking at all these different systems at the moment. But I was at a conference actually not so long ago and had a live AI system on stage, and the challenge the audience to try and beat it. So imagine you bring a real estate company to book a viewing, ask questions. That's what they're trying to do. So they're asking the audience to try and beat the AI, and it was so real, nobody could do it. It was like so authentic. If you were speaking to a real person, can I book a viewing on this 2-bedroom apartment? How many bedrooms does it have? How many bedrooms does it have? What's the heating system? And the AI just knew all the answers. So it's coming. It's going to. So hopefully we'll be one of the first to implement it. But we are still looking at the moment at the systems.
And you know what's so crazy? The problem with stereotypes, perception, is that people often just associate what they see on TV. So real estate in the UK is something that nobody visualizes because all you ever see is pictures of London. And you see the city buses and you see the trains, and like London is now becoming the UK. What people don't realize is life outside London, because London would be equivalent to like my Johannesburg. London would be equivalent to like New York, London will be equivalent to Philadelphia or like Sydney or like all these like all the cities that are rich in history.
Yeah.
And so obviously overpopulated, so you have to adjust how the housing is. What's the difference between obviously London and the northeast, where you're from as well in terms of real estate?
Great question. Yeah. So this got identified. So we've had a change of government in the last 6 months, and we won't talk politics because I'm certainly not an expert. But we've had a change of government. But the previous government, they actually put a policy in called levelling up. So what you've identified there is the north and south divide. So around London, it's obviously very affluent, very wealthy, and the north tends to be the more poorer part of the country. And the previous government implemented this levelling up. So what they decided to do is, in Darlington, actually, would you believe, is to move the government treasury out of Whitehall in London to Darlington, the treasury of the government, of the UK government. That is a big, big deal. The treasury is moving to Darlington. So it's been going on for about 4 years. They haven't moved there yet, as in like, haven't built the office. It's planning is just going through at the moment. But they've moved about 1,500 workers into a government, local council building in the area, a local authority building in the area. But they're building this huge office. It's going to host about 2,500. So it's like Office of National Statistics, Office of Foreign Trade, Office of Business. There's like 6 government departments. And the idea is it's levelling up. So moving government departments up to the northeast, which then unfortunately will not force, but a lot of people in London will move, if they want to, up to the northeast. And then on top of that, it's businesses that feed off that government department. So for example, we've heard Deloitte, KPMG are all looking for offices in that area now. So it drives economic growth in the area. So you are spot on the money when he said, what's the difference? There has been a huge gap, and there is. But the investment in the north now is mega. So Manchester is going to be the second London. If you go to Manchester at the moment, you count the cranes in the sky, honestly, 20, 30, 40 cranes. You look all around the developments, huge Leeds, massive development, massive real estate development, blocks going up. It's super happening all over. The Saudis have bought Newcastle. There's a lot of people investing in blocks in Newcastle. So the north now, I think, will hopefully, I'll never catch up the south, but levelling up, this is what it's for, to level up the country. So as a northeast businessman, and people who know me, I'm so excited about this for the northeast because it puts us on the map. But you are correct. Over the years, it has been the poorer part of the country.
I love that so much. And I personally, obviously, you've seen our conversation. I am invested a lot in like the northeast, especially like in Manchester, because I've been following Sir Jim Ratcliffe and like their model of like London of the North, becoming the new like Manchester Stadium. All the investments and like the population is like drastically over the last 10 years. Manchester has become like the new kind of like new money, new London kind of like feel as well. So I was excited to ask about that, which kind of segues to like a topic that I want to try and balance and find the differences between both markets, both the United States and also the United Kingdom. So what is the biggest difference in the real estate market from your knowledge, from what you've seen in the United States compared to the United Kingdom?
Well, I think there's one, sorry, before I say, I think there's one common thing we've got, which when I spoke to a lot of real estate agents over the last few days, there's one key thing, which is exactly the same. We have a shortage of housing. We have a housing crisis in the UK. There isn't enough houses. Immigration is obviously people have come into the country and the population has grown, and we have a huge shortage of properties. So what's happened is, one area to talk about is HMOs, housing multiple occupation, HMO, has been born in the North East. Now they've been around forever in the UK. What it is, it's a shared house. So as a property investor, it's a really good strategy, and anyone in the UK watching this will know HMOs is a really good property strategy. Like Airbnb, it's a good strategy, a popular strategy. So what you do is, you take a large family home. We have a lot of old school townhouses in the North East, so you might get 6-7 bed, huge 4th floor townhouse. And what you do is, you buy the house and then you convert the rooms with en suites. So you might have 7 or 8 bed HMO. And now a HMO is perfect for a young professional person, so they might move to Leeds, Newcastle, Darlington, Manchester. Renting a single unit property, an apartment, is a lot of money for someone who's on the road. So example in Darlington, if you rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Darlington, you might pay £750 sterling a month. With a HMO shared professional room, you might pay £550, £600, all bills included, and you'll be in a unit with other young people or other shared professional people. So it's quite cool, quite trendy, and it's quite a popular thing. Now, property investors have seen this market. It was a huge gap in the market about 2 years ago because it's a great investment strategy. So what happens is, you would buy this unit. Now there's a lot of compliance and regulations, so in some of them you have to fireproof, smoke alarms, fire doors. There's a lot of initial outlay to make the property compliant. But what happens is the key, and this might happen in the US as well, is one of the strategies called BRR, buy, refurbish, refinance. So just throwing figures out there, you might buy this property for, let's say, 100k. You spend 100k on it, making it compliant and nice and trendy, you put all the cool furniture in, the fire doors, it's all safe. Your outlay is 200k. You then refinance the asset, but because it has large revenue, so when roughly speaking, between 6 and 12 rooms is the sweet spot, and you'll get what's called commercial valuation. So when the mortgage company puts the finance on the unit, they will base it off the revenue, not a comparable of bricks and mortar. So they won't say, right, next door sold last year for 150k, it must be worth 100k. They will look, it's like a lease commercial. They will look at the revenue only, and they'll use a multiplier on the revenue. So it means you've put 200k in, the new valuation might be 350k, and you can pull 75% out loan to value on that. So not only have you got a unit that's cash flowing, you've made 100k on the exit of pulling the money out of the refinance. So it's massively popular. So it's been really, really popular. The drawback now though is HMOs have been flooded in Darlington where we are, because every property investor knows this strategy is really good, because you get a high return and you get money back out. So you might get 100k back out, tax free.
Interesting.
So that's a long way to answer that question, but HMOs have been born out of the housing shortage. Now when I speaking to the US real estate agents, they all said the same thing. They said massive shortage of housing in the US.
And then would you say that what strategies would you say are effective in the United Kingdom that would not be effective in the United States?
I don't know, HMOs maybe. Do you have HMOs here? Shared houses?
I haven't heard of HMOs.
No. So shared houses. So maybe that's a solution to the US housing prices, I don't know. But yeah, basically you're getting properties and you're splitting the rooms up and putting, it's like separate, you almost turn them into mini apartments.
Because there's multi-family homes where people end up like buying, like, let's say like a multi-family, and it's like a duplex or a threeplex or a fourplex, where it's almost like it's one home in a way, but it's divided in like 4 different things for like a fourplex, where there's like one door which will have like 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, one door, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. So maybe that is the same
That sounds
effect.
similar, that sounds
It sounds
similar.
very similar, but like everyone's got their own separate unit,
Yeah.
an own separate place,
But
even
a
though it's
shared
like,
kitchen in the lounge.
no, they don't
Oh,
share.
okay.
Yeah, there are some that they don't share. If you share situations like that, it's almost like a hostel or like
Do you know what? It's a bit like student hall.
student. Yeah, I was about to say it's like
that's what it is.
student
HMOs
housing.
is student houses.
Okay, I've never come across that.
Yeah.
I've only come across that in college, where I have my own room, probably my own bathroom, but we share like a lounge and we share like a kitchen and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But that's more like in college, you know.
Right,
So
yeah.
And then I want to figure out the loan portion, you know,
Yeah.
loans. I know personally for me in South Africa, with loans, they are so strict. You have to get like a 12-month statement. You have to figure out like certain years of experience. Like it's almost like you have to be pinpoint perfect, and it's more risk averse for like banks and so forth. Whereas in the United States, like if you just make a certain amount of money, even if you don't have good credit, there's alternative ways and variety of different options to get a lot of different loans as well.
Right.
So I want to try and figure out how easy is it for like let's say some guy who finishes colleges and like maybe 23, 24 years to get like a loan to buy a home.
It's not easy. To get a loan to buy a home, it's based on a multiplier of your pay, if you pay. So it'll be round about 3 times. Now, arguably, if you were on minimum wage in the UK is now £24,000 English sterling. So technically, you know, and when I'm speaking to young people in the UK, you know, if you want to get into property and real estate and build a property portfolio, one of the things I say is, and everyone makes it as a young person mistake is, you know, don't take on bad debt too young. You know, don't buy a fancy car because you're trying to impress your friends on finance. Stay with your mum and dad, because most people are fortunate to have a mum and dad. You know, it means it's cheap rent, you can live there, and you can use that to save for your first investment property. So, for example, if you get a young person who's on 24k a year, you know, they will be able to buy an investment property for 50, 60,000 in the northeast of England if they want to. And if it's a first-time buyer, the deposit is only 5%. So they don't need a lot of money to get on the housing ladder. Now, if I was a young person now, I would stay at home and I would just build a property portfolio and stay at home as long as I can. But obviously, as a young person, you want to be out on your own and get your own apartment and get your fancy car and go out with your friends, which we've all done. But actually, you have to, there's this saying, an old client of mine used to say, you need to sow before you reap. And the problem with young people is they try and reap too early. You know, they get a fancy car too quick. They spend the money on things that aren't giving them. Like Grant talks about passive income returning on your investment, and that's you know, we've all been young, so you know I did it as well. You know, I blew money as well. But yeah, for young people, if the education's out there, they can learn this stuff. You know, great podcasts like this, networking, you can learn about this stuff. But yeah, stay at home. You know, put all your money into an investment, and then by the time you hit 25, 30, you'll be doing some serious stuff going on, and then you can buy the Ferrari or the whatever you want to buy. You know, don't reap too early.
I want to talk to you about something. Personally, for me, obviously, I don't know where you stand on the whole Brexit thing, and I don't want to go into politics regarding this, but I want to share an experience regarding Brexit. I've traded Forex, or I traded Forex for 9 years. I don't do it any longer, but I was very big on the fundamental side of Forex. In other words, like news, I'd always watch. At the time, the federal chair was Janet Yellen for the United Kingdom, for the United States. And whenever this interest rates or the FOMC for the first month, reading the economic policies, I studied financial economics. I graduated in that actually. But just the historical background. So Brexit 2016 was my greatest one-day gains in my Forex career.
Wow.
So I was watching the news and the votes and everything going on that time. And I give credit to my mentor at that time because he felt like it was going to be pro-Brexit. And reading all the economic fundamentals before them, the pair that we were trading was Great British Pound, United States dollar. Sell the pound, buy the dollar. We went all in on that, and he had one trade. I think he made $130,000 off that. And dollars at the time with South African currency was pretty big, and I made a large amount of money that day as well. So, which segues to my next topic. how has policies and government regulations affected your business?
There's a lot of change happening, and I'm one of these people who's like entrepreneur, business person. I'll always be, I'll always see the positive in everything. That's just how my brain works. I'll always see the positive in everything. So yes, there's a lot of compliance, a lot of legality changes, but we welcome them like good agents, good landlords, good investors. Welcome compliance because it makes the industry better. So as it stands now, to be an agent, to be a real estate agent, there's no licensing or qualification. You just need your PI insurance and some ICO, some data protection. Anyone can do that. But the problem is that creates a lot of cowboys and people that are in the industry that bring negativity to it aren't compliant, as well as landlords. Landlords and investors are the same, but compliance is happening. It started, and it's started changing. So yes, some landlords that know the UK market see it as a negative. They think, oh, there's too much compliance, the government's against landlords, bad tax and all this sort of stuff. But it makes the industry better. It makes it better for better houses for people to live in, better higher standards, safer. We have gas safeties now, electrical safety certificates, EPCs, energy performance certificates. So in the HMOs, there's fire regulation, and it's changing all the time, but it's for the better. It makes people safer, and I personally, welcome it. Yeah, some of it, like any business, it can be a bit of a pain, but you just evolve and you'll learn. And often, it's an opportunity in disguise. There's an opportunity in change. And an example is there's a new shake-up happening in April, May called the Renters' Right Bill in the UK. They've basically thrown the legislation out the window, and it's all changing, all the legal documents. Now, the opportunity on the back of that is all these agents we're buying at the moment, these old school agents that come up to retirement age are thinking, oh God, I want out of this thing. What's happening now? There's more change coming out. I want to sell up. Great, that's an opportunity for us to buy their businesses and bring them in. So yes, there's a lot of compliance, a lot of change, and it happens all the time, but I'm always positive about it, and look for the opportunity. In business, it's about solving problems, isn't it? You make money from solving problems, and changes in compliance are just new problems that you've got to deal with and then work around. So yeah, another long answer is it's here to stay, but it's for the better.
And obviously, the reason I want to ask about the consistency of the market there, I've lived both East Coast. I lived in obviously Georgia, Atlanta. I lived in New Jersey, New York, several years in California, the Bay Area, and obviously now in Salt Lake City, Utah. But with the different states I've lived in, including Idaho, the different states that I've lived in, there's always been variety of different regulations that were very inconsistent, because the United States is different states that are all united to make like one country as well, and so the United Kingdom is more consistent, right? Okay.
That's right. Yeah. So we have counties, states, counties. So yeah, the local authorities do have different powers. Local authorities like the local council or whatever, but generally the laws are the same. Slightly different in Scotland and Wales. So the laws are slightly different in Scotland and Wales, but generally in England they're the same throughout. So for example, how long is minimum term in a tenancy agreement and contract, eviction timescales, process, all that sort of stuff is generally the same. So yeah, it won't be different county to county. Okay.
So obviously right now you have multiple of businesses under your belt,
Yes.
And how do you identify or assess potential new opportunities for new businesses that you can acquire as well?
Yeah, so with the agency, My Property Box, the buy and build model. So a lot of my time is on M&A, mergers and acquisitions. So I spend with my CFO and my team, my senior team, looking for opportunities to buy property management businesses. So it's all about EBITDA multipliers based on the valuation of how we buy these businesses. Well, how we find them is it's a mix of different ways. It's word of mouth. We've got a database of agents in the area, and we just work through them. At the moment, it's a bit of opportunity because there's all this legislation and reform in the industry. There's a lot of opportunity to consolidate. So there's a lot of consolidation in this industry at the moment, and it happens when you speak to a lot of very experienced private equity backers. It happens in a lot of industries. You know, it happened in the travel agency world in the UK 20 years ago, where there was all these high street travel agents. Now there isn't any. Insurance companies have gone through it. So it's just in our industry at the moment, there's consolidation because you don't need loads of offices. You know, it's all centralised. So yeah, we look for business opportunities to buy these businesses and consolidate them into our own, and that's what I'm focused on a lot of the time.
And then, are you only going to buy in the UK, or are you planning to buy in the United States?
Oh, well, I mean, I'd love to turn my property box international. Our private equity backers.
Listen, if you want a branch in Salt Lake City, talk to me.
Oh, let's do it. I would do it. Everyone who knows me knows I would do it tomorrow. But yeah, my private equity backers, they would laugh because they're always like, Ben, slow down.
Hey, let's do this. I'll be there at the end of this year. Let's talk to them. I'll show them a bit of my Airbnb portfolio. I'm trying to start the multi-family thing. I'll try and give them, I'm down, and you want to like branch out to like the Salt Lake City as well. Keep doing frequent trips down there.
Amazing.
As long as you get me seasonal tickets for like the box for Newcastle and Man United, then we're good after that. So.
One thing I would say is in our structure we have a board, we have a non-exec chairman. So when a private equity comes in, they want to put an experienced chairman on the board to basically to manage the team and make sure basically the entrepreneur doesn't blow all the money basically and doesn't be too entrepreneurial. As entrepreneurs, we're good, but we need reining in and controlling a little bit. It's like
you're a lot of risk takers, right?
We're risk takers, but it's like now we have the private equity and the structure. It's like it's calculated risks. So I'm having a transition, and a lot of entrepreneurs know this. Like you'll do entrepreneurs make things work. They move money around and do this deal, that deal. When you become with a structured VC, and you have to be reined in a little bit and be controlled because it's calculated, everything's tracked and calculated and methodical, and you have to change the way you're thinking. You have to cool down your entrepreneur sort of erratic behaviour and be more laser focused on things. We've got a fantastic chairman called Richard, and one thing he sort of taught me from the start was, Ben, be laser focused on your strategy, and that's actually a lesson I went through for the whole property industry, because when we talk about all these property strategies, Airbnb, HMOs, land development, acquisition, what you tend to find is in the UK, a lot of people get pulled into them all, so they do a bit of HMO, they do a bit of this, a bit of that, and actually, what I learned from Richard is stick to your knit and do one thing really well and do it world class, rather than trying to spread yourself too thin. And that is a lesson a lot of entrepreneurs go through.
And speaking about that, I'm glad, like it seems like there's the structure of it. It's almost like a Fortune 500 kind of company with like board, chairman, CEO, and all that kind of stuff as well. So
it's exciting, but you're accountable. So it's quite good. People often ask me how it's going. It's a little bit like, I always say, having a personal trainer in the gym. Now we all know how to go to the gym, but you're going to have a better workout if the personal trainer's there because you're accountable to them. You're going to turn up, they're going to push you harder. And it actually, even though it's painful, it benefits you, doesn't it? That's what it's like. I'm accountable to the board. Now it benefits me because I'm the main shareholder of the business. But yeah, it's tough. They push you. You've got to push yourself. So it's that accountability piece, which I find really good and exciting.
Awesome. I love that so much.
And now, even speaking about that, how hard is it for international investor to perhaps try and acquire a business in the UK being a foreigner? I mean, it's easy for the Saudis and so forth as well. We've seen that with like Newcastle, as a matter of fact, our second team, because it's also my second UK team. So we've seen that, but like a normal like investor, like let's say they make like $1 or $2 million or something, and acquiring a small business, how hard is it in the Kingdom?
No, it's fairly easy. We have a lot of international clients, a lot of property international clients, because the UK market is always a solid market to invest in. And yeah, we have a lot of sort of foreign investors from the Middle East, Japan, Australia, South Africa that invest in the UK, because the UK market, to be fair, throughout history, property has absolutely always been rock solid. If you buy a property in London, that's like, that's the safe bet. Your money is going to be there. It's a solid investment. So yeah, there is a lot of, foreign investors, but it's fairly easy. It's just setting up limited companies and share structure. And like anything, if you get the correct advice, correct attorneys, correct accountants, surrounding yourself with the correct people, it's fairly easy to do if you get the right people to help you.
As we're about to wrap up right now, I want to just ask a few questions. It's so funny, like, I had a list of all these questions and I probably asked only 5 because I just felt like that's what I know I enjoyed the conversation as well. I want to try and figure out, let's say you were to start your real estate journey pretty much all over again, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
That's a great question. I would educate myself faster. I would surround myself with the right people earlier. But when you start off in business, or property or business, you don't know what you don't know. And you think you know a little bit and you might go, but it's all about getting around the right people that have done that thing. There's a brilliant book called The Richest Man in Babylon, you know the book? And that is all about asking the person that's done it. If they've never done it, how can they give advice on it? And when you start off in business, everyone is going to give you advice, your friends, your parents, your neighbour. But have they successfully run a business and got a property portfolio? If they haven't, why are they giving you advice? Just get the right advice from the right people. So yeah, the mistake I made is I didn't educate myself quickly enough. So I think I could have done it in a short time if I'd spent more time reading books, listening to podcasts, going to the correct networking meetings and learning from other people. Awesome stuff.
And I want to try and say like probably 3 last questions because I'm very curious with political tension happening around the world, with the whole tariffs and the economic outlook of just international economics. What impact does that have on your business?
But the main impact is rates to borrow money, interest rates. So I think that happens globally. So interest rates like everywhere have gone up. 3 or 4 years ago you could borrow money at 1-2%. Now it's like 4-5% in the UK. But like anything, if you strategize properly, for example, doing the BRR method I talked about, buy, refurbish, refinance. If you're recycling your money every time you do a property investment, it doesn't really matter the interest rate. Yeah, you won't get as much yield on your rent, but you're acquiring an asset, pulling all your money back out, or most of the time, it doesn't happen every time, and going again and again and again. So it's just learning that. It's just all about learning. There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be wars and economic problems going on. That's the journey. But it's just working your way around that and understanding, how you get around it. Because everybody's in the same boat. Everyone is in the same boat.
I'm so glad you answered it in that way because we're just going to go to the interest rate. So you answered 2 questions in one, so I appreciate that. And I think it's super hard with what's happening because interest rates have been going up for a while, and usually there's a trend when the US has interest rates going high, there's a direct effect. Because I looked at the 2008 financial crisis that happened in the United States with the Lehman Brothers going down, Goldman Sachs almost out and under, that just has an effect on the entire world economic outlook as well. And so I was just very curious regarding the interest rates in the because I follow, when I used to do a lot of trading, we have to follow Asian Open, British Open before we follow Wall Street, because you can kind of see how trends kind of go like as well. So that's but
just on that point, if you look at history, interest rates have always, if you speak to any old school property investor from the 70s or 80s, they will talk about interest rates at 8, 9, 10, high percentage. There's always, it's just a cycle we're on, and at the moment it feels like they're higher, but actually if you looked at the last 50 years average, we're right in the middle. It's not. It's just higher than it was 5 years ago. So actually, it's just part of the journey, part of the cycle. Awesome stuff.
Well, I can't believe the time has gone by so fast, and I had a few other questions, but I want to ask you the most important question. I ask this to all my guests. The code to winning, insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow. In your personal opinion, what is your definition of winning?
I think freedom. Freedom is people talk about success, people talk about money. People that aren't in business might say you're money obsessed, but actually it's freedom obsessed. Freedom is being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. But that's like, look after a elderly parent, take your children to something you want to take them to, take them away on holiday. Freedom to do whatever you want to do. And actually, this is the same we say in the UK. if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And if you love business and property and people like I do, I'm just loving this whole thing, this whole journey. And that's freedom to me. I'm doing what I want to do. So I think winning is all about doing what you want to do. And I think so many people get stuck in jobs they don't want to do. We're chasing this retirement. Oh, I can't wait till I retire. I can't wait till I stop working. You know, so I think for me, it's loving what you do and freedom.
If you could like let the audience know if they want to try and get a hold of you for like advice or anything, what's your Instagram handle or like whatever you want to try and share with the audience with us as well.
So if anyone would like to get hold of me, my name's Ben Quaintrell. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, old school, I still like Facebook.
Hopefully not MySpace.
Yeah, no, not MySpace. I have my property box in the northeast of England. If you just Google my property box, you'll see my name come up and on YouTube and everything. So yeah, if anyone in the US, anyone in the world wants to talk property, business acquisition in the UK, please reach out and get in touch.
Awesome stuff.
The code to winning, insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow. Ben, great honor. Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you for having me. Thank you.